All right, welcome back to Mr. PL's with Algebra, Unit 4, Topic 3, Lesson number 6. This is solving quadratic equations. And we're going to use those four methods that we've done in the past. And I'm going to start off doing question number 3 using the zero product property, which is basically change it to factored form, set it equal to 0, and then anything times 0 is 0. Now, the first thing I need to do is I need to set it equal to 0. So that gives me 3x squared minus 9 equals 0. Now, what you're going to notice here is that both of these terms in this binomial can be divided by 3. So I'm going to factor out that GCF, which gives me 3 times x squared minus 3 equals 0. And now that I got two factors, this times this equals 0, I can set each factor equal to 0. Now, 3 equals 0 does not make sense. That's actually not a real answer. That's an imaginary answer. And x squared minus 3 equals 0. Add 3 to both sides. That gives you x squared equals 3. Square root of both sides to find x. X must be the square root of 3, which is going to give you an irrational answer. All right, question number 2. This time I'm not going to use zero product property. I'm going to use the square root method. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I notice this is a perfect square. It looks like it's vertex form, basically. And I'm going to add 16 to both sides. So that way I know I usually like to keep it equal to 0, but not when I'm using the square root method. I'm going to take the square root of this side and the square root of this side, and both sides are perfect squares. The square root of x minus 5 squared is x minus 5, and the square root of 16 is both positive and negative 16. So now all I got to do is solve it twice. Do x minus 5 equals 6, and x minus 5 equals negative 6. The answer over here is going to be 11, and the answer over here looks like it's going to be negative 1. No, that's negative 6, isn't it? All right, so let me go back and change that. That's not positive 6. So negative 6, no, that is positive 6. Positive 6 plus 5 more makes 11. Sorry, hard to see there. The last question, now I saved this one for last because it's going to need the quadratic formula. If I put this in the calculator and press on table, you get one of the answers, but the other answer is a decimal. So I'm going to use quadratic formula because it's not a perfect square here and it doesn't look factorable. It's got decimals involved. So the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared, well, 1.3 times itself is going to be 1, oh, that's not right, 1.3 times 1.3 gives me 1.69. And then I'm going to do the negative 4 times 8 times c. Negative 4 times 2.4 times negative 5.2. That's going to give me 49.92. And then divide that all by 2 times a, which is 2 times a is 4.8. All right, now the discriminant, if I add those together, the 1.69, that's going to give me 51.61. So the discriminant is 51.61. Now, the square root of 51.61, my phone doesn't have, so I wonder if I could do this a different way. What is the square root of 51 and 61/100ths? The answer is approximately 6,100. Nah, it got the wrong number. 51, and so let's see, it's going to be slightly higher than 7. I believe the answer was 7.2 if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going to trust with that. So negative 1.3 plus or minus 7.2, give or take, divided by 4.8. So now I'm going to solve that twice. I'm going to do it plus 7.2 divided by 4.8 and then minus 7.2. If I'm not mistaken, I'm having to go off memory here. I think the answers were 1 2/10 and negative 1 8/10. Just do the work yourself and check it with the calculator. I don't have a graphing calculator on me, unfortunately. So this lesson is about word problems, and we're going to be using all those strategies that we've done in the past. Just talking about an airplane, or a jet plane, I should say. And this is the parabola that it makes. So this jet is going to decrease its altitude and then increase it back up. And then what it's going to do is it's going to cross that horizontal line of 10,000. So if this is the 10,000 line altitude, so it's going to hit that altitude not just once, but twice. When it declines, it then comes back up and inclines again. Right inequality represents, okay, an inequality. So there's the equation for the airplane. So I'm going to use x instead of t because x seems to be a little bit cleaner. I mistake t's for plus signs. So I'm going to use x instead. So 16x squared minus 1,000x plus 20,000. There we go. And right inequality says it's above, so that would be greater than 10,000. All right, so what times is the aircraft exactly 10,000? So when is it equal? This is when it's greater than 10,000. So I'm going to set it equal to 0 by subtracting 10,000 from both sides. So that's 16x squared minus 1,000x plus 10,000, because you remember I subtracted 10,000 from both sides, equals 0. All right, so now I can use the quadratic formula. Opposite of b would be 1,000 plus or minus square root of b squared. Well, that's going to be 1 million. Because 1,000 times itself is 1 million. Negative 4 times a and then times c. I believe that becomes negative 600. Once again, I'm going by memory here. 600 and, let's see, I believe it gets 3,600 as the answer. 640,000. You always use a calculator. Negative 4 times 16 times 10,000. And then divided that by 2 times a, which is 32. 2 times 16 is 32. All right, now, as I mentioned, I do remember that this ended up being 360,000. The reason I know that is because the square root of that, that's a perfect discriminant, is 600. So 1,000 plus or minus 600 divided by 32. Now all I got to do is solve that twice, once with addition, once with subtraction, and you end up getting two different answers. The first answer is 12.5. That's what you get with subtraction. And the other answer you get is 50. So 1,600 divided by 32 is 50. So those are the two times when the airplane, after 12.5 seconds and after 50 seconds, are the two times when, sorry, I have to pause. Capitals just scored. I watched that, saw it on the side of my head. Yes, I'm wearing a Caps jersey. Moving on. At what time interval is the aircraft above 10,000 feet? So it's above 10,000 feet when the time has been, so remember the graph. So there's the airplane like this. Here's 10,000 feet. So right here has been 12.5 seconds. Right here has been 50 seconds. So when t is less than 12.5 seconds and when t is greater than 50 seconds. Those are the two times when it's above. See right here? See how it's above the 10,000 feet? At what time interval is it below the 10,000 feet? Well, it's below in between these 2 points. So when t is in between 12.5 and 50, that's when it's going to be below. What time interval represents the solution to the inequality? Well, the solution is at what time interval? That's the solution, I guess. So when is it below? Okay, so hard to is represented by the equation of this. Don't remember exactly what the question. In this equation, time represents it. Doesn't really tell us. How many seconds will the aircraft stay below? Okay, so that's 50 minus 12.5 would be 37.5 seconds. All right, next question. Very similar, but actually solves a little bit different. This time the equation, airplane's got a different parabola. So that we got 16x squared minus 500x plus 30,000 equals 30,000. Now, first thing I would do is I would subtract 30,000 from both sides. So basically this and this are going to cancel from each other. So we've got 16x squared minus 500x equals 0. Now, I'm going to use zero product property because both 16 and 500 can both be divided by 4, I believe. So I'm going to put the 4 on the outside. 4x, made that clear actually. So 4x. Both this divided by 4x becomes 4x. And this divided by 4x becomes negative, let's see, 4 into 500, 250, 125 equals 0. Now I can solve it twice. Now 4x equals 0. And 4x minus 125 equals 0. All right, so this one's easy. This one's going to be 0 because 0 divided by 4 is still 0. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult. Add 125 to both sides. 4x equals 125. 125 divided by 4 is going to be your answer. That I guess I can put in the calculator. Back to calculator. Here we go. 125 divided by 4 is 31.25. So there's your two answers. On what time interval is the aircraft below? So in between. So when x was in between those two answers. And how long was the aircraft at 30,000 feet exactly? How long was the aircraft below? So that was 31.25 seconds. I'm just going to assume that was seconds. Okay. Last of all, we are at the homework. All right, so now, probably the first time you've ever seen this, if you're one of my students in my class. What I mean by this is we've always been doing equations, but you can clearly see that these are all inequalities. You're going to solve them exactly the same. Yeah, Caps just scored again. Now it's 4-1. Sorry. If you're watching this next year, you're probably have no idea what I'm talking about. It's a playoff game. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. And that's going to give me x squared plus 8x minus 20 equals... No, I'm going to write less than 0. Remember, I'm going to solve it just like an equation. Now I'm going to factor it. What two numbers give me negative 20 but also add up to 10? And that would be that would be positive 10 and negative 2. Remember, negative 2 times 10, check. Negative 2 plus 10, check. That works. All right, so now all I have to do is set each one equal to 0. Not equal to, but less than 0. So you're doing everything exactly the same as an equation. And this one's going to be x minus 2 is less than 0. So this one has an answer that is x must be less than positive 2. And this one means x must be less than negative 10. Greater than 2. I believe the second one had to be the opposite. I believe I am messing up there. Okay, sorry. I have to check that and come back to this video and make an update. Add 6 to both sides. So x squared plus 5x plus 6 greater than or equal to 0. Sorry, been a while since I've done this. I'm pretty sure that the second one you got to flip the sign. All right, so I believe those are your two answers. When x is greater than 2. Let me just double check that. So let's make it 4. 4 squared would be 16. 8 times 4 would be 32. Minus 15 would be less than 5. Okay, no. Sorry for the 1 minute confusion. Nope, let's leave it the way it was. All right, so less than. Great, moving on. Factor this. Yes, that would be x plus, what two numbers would give me 6, but also add up to 5? That would be 3 and 2. X plus 3 and x plus 2 greater than or equal to 0. X plus 3 greater than or equal to 0. X plus 2 greater than or equal to 0. All right, great. So that's going to be x is greater than or equal to negative 3, and x is greater than or equal to negative 2. Last question. It's already in standard form over here, but notice, you probably didn't notice, this might be the easiest question here, that all three of these numbers can all be divided by 16. So I'm going to factor out the negative 16. So that makes this x squared minus 16 times 4 is 64x, and 16 times 5 is 80. So it's going to be minus 5 greater than 0. Okay, can this be factored? What two numbers give you negative 5 but also add up to negative 4? That would be negative 5 and 1. Great. X minus 5 and x plus 1 greater than 0. All right. Looks like we got 3 factors here. Negative 16 is greater than 0. Okay, that's one answer. We got another answer. X minus 5 is greater than 0, so x must be greater than 5. And x plus 1 is greater than 0, so that means x must be greater than negative 1. Great. Thanks again for watching, and please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and have a wonderful day. And I am, because Caps are up 3-1, I believe. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.